Welcome to the AI Brief from the YPO Technology Network. I'm Stephen Forte. Somewhere in your company this quarter, an engineer made a sensible decision you have never heard about. They routed a piece of work to a cheaper AI model. On today's episode, a price war that just went 2 orders of magnitude vertical, a congressional letter that turned exactly that optimization into a disclosure obligation with dates on it, and the number on your cost dashboard that quietly stopped telling the whole truth. Here's the promise for the next few minutes. By the end, you will understand the two forces pulling on every AI procurement decision you fund. One economic, one political, why they both got stronger in the same week, and the question your technology chief should be able to answer inside a day. Start with the prices, because they have stopped behaving like prices. On Saturday, DeepSeek in the Chinese AI lab that spooked the markets 18 months ago cut the price of its newest model in half to 14 cents per million tokens of input. Tokens are the unit AI usage is billed in, and to give that number scale, it came one day after OpenAI cut its own prices by up to 80% on its workhorse tiers. According to Artificial Analysis, an independent firm that benchmarks what models actually cost to run, the same standard test suite now costs roughly 3 cents on DeepSeek's cheapest model, 86 cents on Moonshot's Kimi, $1.86 on OpenAI's mainline model, and $3.15 on Anthropic's top model, 3 cents to $3. That is not a discount. That is a spread of 2 orders of magnitude for work of broadly comparable quality on ordinary tasks. And it moved again within 1 week. And here is the part that tells you it will keep moving. Beijing is openly warning its own AI firms about this race to the bottom. Their word for it translates roughly as involution, while state subsidies keep unprofitable labs in the game anyway. When the referee is also funding the sprinters, the race does not slow down because someone is losing money. The price is a policy instrument wearing a price tag. Now, if you stop the story there, the conclusion writes itself. Every competent engineering team on Earth looks at a 100-fold spread and does the obvious thing. Route the easy work to the cheap model, save the expensive one for the hard problems. It is what your team is doing right now, whether or not it has told you, which brings us to the letter. On the 31st of July, 2 committees of the U.S. Congress, the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, which handles strategic competition with China, and House Homeland Security, wrote to the chief executive of DoorDash, the food delivery company. The trigger, DoorDash's own co-founder had posted publicly and candidly that the company routes easier engineering tasks through Moonshot's Kimi model to cut costs and reserves Anthropic's models for the difficult ones. Read the demands because they have dates. A complete list of every Chinese AI model DoorDash uses, plus its security testing records, by the 14th of August. In-person briefings to Congress from its infrastructure, security, procurement, and compliance staff by the 21st. Let me be precise about what this is and is not. Nobody has alleged DoorDash broke a law. This is an information demand, not an enforcement action, and the honest credit beat belongs here. The only reason anyone knows about DoorDash's routing is that its co-founder told the truth in public voluntarily about an optimization most companies run in silence. He described standard engineering practice. Give him that and notice what it bought. Because that is the point. That should stop you. DoorDash's routing logic, cheap model for the easy tasks, frontier model for the hard ones, is not exotic. It is the textbook answer. The difference between DoorDash and your company is 1 candid post and 1 letter. Why is Washington's temperature this high? 2 stories from the same week fill in the pressure underneath. First, the compute. Bloomberg reported that Moonshot's models were trained on a cluster of roughly 20,000 Nvidia chips provisioned through a computing deal with Alibaba, the Chinese commerce and cloud giant, which owns about a third of Moonshot. Alibaba called the specific chip type claim nonsense, but notably did not dispute the compute arrangement itself, and its shares jumped about 7% on the report. The lesson the committees have clearly absorbed. Export controls constrain who may buy chips, not who can access compute through a cloud contract. The cheap Chinese model is cheap partly because the control regime leaks and partly because the state is paying for the war. Second, 1 line that explains the mood, attributed carefully. Reuters reported from a review of more than 80 Chinese papers and patents that military-linked research institutions in China have used outputs from OpenAI and Anthropic models to help train defense systems. Whatever your politics, that is the backdrop against which a congressman reads a post about routing code through Kimi. And on the same calendar, the other side of the fence, the White House reportedly finished, quietly and behind schedule, a voluntary framework under its June executive order that would give the government up to 30 days of pre-release access to test frontier models' cyber capabilities, and is briefing OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google on it this week. Washington is building formal rails to the American labs while building disclosure pressure around the Chinese ones. The lanes are being painted in both directions at once. Yesterday, we talked about the label the law now requires on AI's output. Today is the layer underneath. Which machine produced it and who is entitled to ask? Picture a $300 million logistics operator in Rotterdam. Last quarter, its platform team wired Kimi into the code pipeline for routine work and cut the AI line item by 90%. The CFO applauded, the dashboard turned green, and nobody mentioned it to legal because why would they? It was a unit cost decision about interchangeable inputs. That company now holds a governance posture it has never discussed, adopted by an engineer, ratified by a spreadsheet. Multiply that by nearly every company you know. Here is my read. The model routing decision has left the engineering department and it is not coming back. The economics are structural. A subsidized price war does not mean revert because a CFO wishes it would. And the scrutiny is structural too because the committees now have a template letter and a precedent. Neither force cancels the other. Cheap models will keep getting cheaper and using them will keep getting more visible. Companies that treat this as a governance posture get to choose their position. Companies that treat it as an engineering detail will have their position read back to them, possibly with a reply by date. So if I were sitting in your seat this week, I would ask my technology chief one question and time the answer. Which foreign AI models run inside our workflows today and who approved each one? Not a project. A list with names next to it. If producing that list takes more than a day, that is the finding. DoorDash produced theirs on a congressional clock, and you would rather build yours on your own. Because here is the number that broke this week. The cost per token, the number your team optimizes, the number that justified the routing in the first place, no longer captures the price of the token. The full price now includes who is allowed to know you used it, what you must be able to produce when they ask, and what your board says when the question arrives with a deadline. 3 cents a run is a real number. It is just no longer the whole number. The price of a token is public. The price of using one is political. That is the YPO Tech Network AI brief for Wednesday, August 5th. I am Stephen Forte. If this was useful, send it to a fellow member. I will be back tomorrow with more. Until then, stay sharp.